I don't know who you are, but I do know what you need. I can tell you, I know some gentlemen with a very particular set of skills. Skills they have attained over a long career of studying tape and statistics. Skills they want to share to make you a nightmare for the rest of your league. Head over to www.ultimatedraftkit.com and order it right now. You will be prepared for your draft. Your league will be frightened of you. And you will kill them.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast, coming to you from the FantasyJocks.com studios with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
Good morning, one and all. Welcome in to the show. The Fantasy Footballers back again. Andy, Mike, Jason. Mike is a year older than he was the last time we recorded.
I certainly am. And
you look it.
I feel it. I feel it in every aspect of my body.
Welcome to my level.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're tied again. We got tied again.
You guys are both older than me.
You gave Liam the hard cut there at the beginning.
I didn't
of the
give
show.
him the hard cut. That was you. That was the drop. The drop ended right there on the hard cut, and then it caught me off guard, so I had to hit the intro button. So that's on you, bro.
We're going to need a committee to inspect this.
Welcome in. Yes, we had the request for the UDK commercials starring Liam Neeson.
Well, when you're friends with Liam Neeson.
Sure, you've got to give him his due.
You have to do that.
You have
or
to.
he'll kill you.
Yes. So, yeah, it's a very serious thing to get the Ultimate Draft Kit. Welcome into the show. We have a really interesting, fun episode today. It's the classic FAFQ episode.
Ah, yes.
FAFQ, the frequently asked fantasy questions. This is probably the first in a series of shows that we'll do periodically during the offseason, including a 10 mistakes and a 10 tips episode. Some of these more general use episodes where we get into the weeds with things like commissioner issues, starting a league, strategy issues,
basics,
some basic things
in there.
Yeah, so this is a great show for you to share with others maybe that are in your league, others that are starting out in fantasy football. But it's not just going to stay at the basics. We'll get into some of the more detailed commissioner questions and things like that.
Frequently we get asked, how should I do this for my league? And not only, well, how should I do it? Well, how do I convince my league that this is what we should do? Well, you let them know that this is what we said you have to do.
This is very selfish of us because now we have an episode we can point to when people ask us that question. Say, hey,
we've already answered
Go
that.
Listen to that one.
It's good enough for Stone Cold. And he says, because I said so.
Right.
And now it's because we say so.
Hey, there you go. So we have a good show. We'll get into a little bit of news, have a Review-a-Saurus Rex. The quick question of the day I think is an absolutely great one. So credit to you, Brooks, on succeeding at your job.
Finally.
Thanks, Andy.
Quick question of the day is this. It's a great one. Is this the season that Amari Cooper takes over as the top wide receiver in Oakland? If you look at the last 2 years, obviously Amari Cooper much younger, 6 years younger than Michael Crabtree. But over the last 2 years, Michael Crabtree has outpaced him in fantasy production, 18th and 22nd in 2015, and then 11th for Michael Crabtree last year, 13th for Amari Cooper. Very interesting debate.
I got my answer.
I think your answer is going to be no.
Your answer for my answer is incorrect because it is most certainly the year.
Interesting.
I believe it. And I think coming from me, knowing that, as Andy, you just said, you thought I would say no because
you have been a Crabtree backer.
Yeah, Michael Crabtree
You've got stock in Crabs.
He's better in fantasy football than most of the time people give him credit for over the last couple of years. We've seen that. But here's the reality is that, yes, Crabtree finished ahead of Amari Cooper last year, but barely. We're not talking a drastic point spread here, and that was with more red zone targets going to Crabtree. That was with a couple of just bizarre drops or a toe on a goal line, just a couple breaks that had those gone the other way. This past season, Amari Cooper would have outscored Michael Crabtree on the season. Now, who would I rather draft it will be Michael Crabtree, because he's going to come many rounds later and he's going to be less volatile. He's not going to have the huge games and then the disappearing games the way that Michael Crabtree has, or the way that Amari Cooper has a little bit.
What I like about that, and I appreciate your opinion because no one knows crabs better than you.
They don't go away.
This is it. We are spiraling.
Is the fact that Andre Holmes will not be there next year, most likely, unless he settles for some deal, because
Roberts.
I think he'll be leaving. And Seth Roberts and Andre Holmes stole a surprising amount of red zone targets that Amari Cooper just wasn't. I mean, he was probably fourth on the priority list at times last year. And so you talk about the big games and the little games. I think some of that can even out for Amari Cooper. He's so young. He's a great dynasty pick, and he's got a good quarterback that trusts him. It's a maturing year for him. This is year 3, right, for Amari Cooper. So he needs to take that step and be that, go-to receiver. You're also probably right about the fantasy draft value.
It's all about the red zone you guys were talking about to me. Amari Cooper last year, 14.1% of the red zone targets. Meanwhile, Crabtree was near 23%, 22.8%. And then even the aforementioned Seth Roberts, 21.7% of their red zone targets.
Yeah, so it backs that up.
If those numbers don't go up for Amari, certainly Amari could outproduce Crabtree. But, I mean, Cooper, touchdowns for his career, 6 his rookie year, 5 last year.
Right.
I mean, yeah,
great.
Yes, that's great.
Yeah, I'm just saying touchdowns are the one statistic that you can't always rely on and bank on.
Yeah,
and you don't have to worry about, okay, well, what if he regresses from that number? There's no way that Amari Cooper next year doesn't get 5 or 6 touchdowns. No way.
Right.
But there is a way that he gets 9 or 10 touchdowns, especially with Seth Roberts' 20 red zone targets going away. For me, I look at things like that. I say
20%.
Great. No. He had 20 red zone targets. Michael Crabtree only had 21.
Right.
So
it makes a difference.
But that's the question to me. Those touchdowns are not going to go up if his red zone and that close scoring target percentage doesn't go up.
Asking for a friend, who would you rather have in a dynasty league? And this is a tough one.
Crabtree or Cooper?
No.
Oh,
Cooper or Michael Thomas. Because I look at those two guys, and like next year,
Cooper.
I lean on Michael Thomas, but then I look at Drew Brees not being there long term and Garrett Carr being there long term.
That's exactly why it's Amari Cooper for me. Derek Carr is on the rise.
Yeah, I agree with you. I love Oakland. We're going to get into the meat of the show, some news here in a minute. Before I do that, I want to remind you can follow us on Twitter at the FF Ballers. We're also on YouTube. We have a show after the show today. We're talking, it's a food-related topic, so near and dear to all of our hearts.
Please, are we redeeming the beats?
That's an impossibility.
The beats will never get redemption.
They cannot be redeemed. I wanted to let you know, look, John Ross, the official 40 time for John Ross at the Combine over the weekend, 4.22, broke the record of Chris Johnson, was setting Twitter abuzz. We've got a brand new article on the website from Matt Harmon, Reception Perception, looking at John Ross. I think John Ross has played himself into a first-round draft pick for a team looking for that burner type of guy. If Devin Smith can go, well, he was a first-rounder, right?
Devin Smith was second round.
Oh, second round. Yeah, so, I mean, I look at him. Look, he blew it out of the building. I mean, 4.22. Check the article out on the website.
And then came up limping.
You know what's crazy to me?
You have to after you run that fast.
What's crazy to me, which is not getting very much pub in the news cycle, I don't know if you remember this, but before the Combine started, Adidas said, if anyone breaks the record at the Combine, we will give you an island.
Was that what it was? I thought it was like $1 million.
No, that's what it was
I
last
do remember.
Year.
Oh,
this year
last
it was you can win an island. However, John Ross was not wearing Adidas.
So he doesn't qualify?
Correct.
Oh, that's rough.
Mistakes were made.
Maybe Adidas knows it's impossible to break the record in their shoe.
I'm trying to find the
throwing shade over here.
I don't know. How do you offer an island up? That seems like a lot of bravado.
Maybe they know that like it's against the rules of a sponsorship where everybody coming has to wear a different brand, so you can't. You're not allowed.
All right. Well, from time to time, we love to read a review of the show. Your reviews on iTunes and elsewhere, they help support this podcast going year-round, and so we're going to do that right now.
Review-a-Saurus Rex.
This one comes in from Joey Pasta.
Delicious.
Pasta. Proud Foot Clan member for 2 years. I cannot express the thanks I have for you all into feeding my fantasy football obsession. So many laughs and great knowledge has come from this show. I've learned so much over the years from you all. I know you hear it a lot, but truly thankful to always have the podcast to listen to during my weeks. Very excited for the 2017-2018 season. And he didn't write this, but I'm pretty confident that the rest of his review would have been, woo, let's do it!
Yeah, that's the appropriate reaction for 2017-2018. Thank you for the review there, Joey Pasta.
Joey Pasta. And before we
reminds me of Tony Meatballs.
Hey,
like, Tony does anybody out there remember Tony Meatball?
He's MIA.
If you or someone you know has seen
Tony Meatballs, I would think that Joey Pasta would know where Tony Meatballs is.
Yes, probably because on top of them, right?
They're delicious.
You put the meatball on the pasta.
I've dug in some investigative reporting on John Ross here. Apparently, he already has a deal with Nike.
Yeah.
So he could not wear the Adidas.
I want to know where Nike is. Why didn't they bring up this island thing? This has got to be all the rage.
Because they knew they were going to owe John Ross an island.
Like, he's really fast.
Yeah. All right, let's get into the news.
News and notes from around the league.
Oh, my darling.
At least send him some fruit or something. I mean,
right. Yeah, you need a fruit basket.
No island for you.
No. Jets have released Brandon Marshall.
Oh.
This is such great news for your boy, Andy, because honestly, there's no way I could have predicted good fantasy value for Brandon Marshall if he stayed with the Jets, who are what appears to be. I believe that the Jets are trying to build a losing team this year. Like
they're cutting people every 5 minutes.
Yeah, I don't mean that hyperbolically, or I look at what they're doing. It reminds me of kind of the Cleveland thing last year. I think they're going to – I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, they're rebuilding is the right
but,
word. I mean, they're cutting as many guys that are in that, aren't going to play a part in their future.
Please cut Eric Decker.
Yeah, well, see, I was going to say, if Jason can't foresee a great season from Brandon Marshall, and if Eric Decker stays in New York.
He'll be fine, but please cut him. I want him to be better.
Well, Brandon Marshall, we'll learn more about where he heads. You've heard different teams. You've heard Baltimore. You've heard New England has some interest in him. We know New England's looking for a wideout. There's some, they offered the 32nd pick for Brandon Cooks. So we're going to avoid as much like team speculation on today's show, because today's the day that the open, what would you call that? The legal tampering can begin.
Yes. Teams
can begin negotiating with free agents, but they cannot sign them until Thursday. And so Thursday and next Tuesday, we'll be talking all about the implications of the fantasy football signings that take place. The lay of the land is going to change a ton. There are going to be players impacted for the negative, right? They're going to be backfields that right now, maybe it's a Kenneth Dixon or a Paul Perkins or somebody that looks like they have the keys to the castle, and they won't after this or the draft. But we'll get into all of that later on.
Also, a public service announcement as you wait for our next show with some legit free agency news. Just remember that when people announce they're going somewhere in this period of time, it's no guarantee. Remember when Frank Gore was going to the Philadelphia Eagles?
It's true.
That came out in that tampering period where it's like, whoa, all right, well, breaking news. And then he's like, well, I changed my mind.
Is that what he said?
Yeah.
That's a weird voice. All right, hey, guys, it's time. We finally have one.
Mediocre signing of the week.
No. James Jones has not signed. It's Jeremy Kerley, 3-year, $10.5 million contract with the 49ers. Kerley was good.
I think it's a good signing.
Kerley's, yeah, I mean, that's a good deal for Kerley. It's a good deal for San Francisco. They obviously need a headliner at the wide receiver position, but Kerley can fill in that wide receiver 2-3 role. He'll be just fine, and they certainly don't have a one in Torrey Smith. Torrey Smith has been cut.
Yep.
Here's the most staggering number to me. 2 seasons in San Francisco, 53 catches in 2 years. Total.
Not a good couple years.
That's a bad 1 year. For what you're expecting from Torrey Smith.
That's a great way to put it.
That much, yes.
So there is some talk about, Baltimore, a return. He never wanted to leave Baltimore. They need a guy. We'll see what happens with Torrey Smith.
Mike Wallace would have to get the boot.
I think he can still play.
I think he can.
But is he worth the money? If you've had 2 years the way he just had them, I don't know if he's going to be at the top of the list. The Saints are going to tender exclusive rights free agent Willie Snead.
Nice.
Yeah, of course.
Willie Snead is, I believe, he's over 1,800 yards over the last 2 years combined. He's been good. He's young. Pete Carroll said Thomas Rawls and C.J. Prosise will compete for the top spot at running back.
That's not good news for Thomas Rawls.
I had not seen that news.
Man, I'll tell you what. I'm growing on the C.J. Prosise.
Oh, there's room.
You will not
There's
ever
room.
have me convert over to calling him C.J. Goat-Size, no matter how great he is, because that's the worst nickname ever.
Sure, it is.
But as a Dynasty Thomas Rawls owner,
And when Jamal
got me a little
Charles signs,
scared.
because I believe Jamal Charles is going to go to Seattle, it's going to muddy the waters even more. But this is concerning that Pete Carroll's not giving the keys to Thomas Rawls. Prosise obviously was very good in limited work. All right, let's move on. Cowboys coach Jason Garrett said he is not looking to lighten Ezekiel Elliott's workload.
Excellent.
Neither would I.
yeah, if it ain't broken,
Yeah.
break it.
Adam,
that's the plan.
Adam Gase is hoping for more passing game involvement from Brooks's boy, Jay Ajayi. How do you feel,
Heyo.
Brooks? Oh, his contribution was a heyo. You excited about Jay Ajayi now?
Oh, yeah. Now? Yeah, totally.
Even more. He has a history of catching the ball in college.
Certainly does. Certainly does.
Good thoughts. Bills placed an original round tender on Mike Gillislee. I believe that number is about $1.75 million. So if another team wants him,
I believe this is a big mistake by Buffalo.
As in
They're
to
gonna
not
lose
give
him?
him a higher one,
Yes.
a la C.J. Anderson last year.
The difference between the original tender and the second round tender, I believe, is around $800,000 or so. And for another team, they would have to give up a 5th round pick. And I believe that if there's a team who wants a running back and you can get
Mike
Gillislee, who was fantastic the last couple years, why would you not go do that? I mean, we saw the Denver Broncos had to pay the piper when they thought they could get away with this on C.J. Anderson. They ended up paying him way more than they wanted to, just to save a couple $100,000.
yeah. I mean, part of you wonders if Gillislee's worth more of the investment for a team that does not, that needs another backfield piece as opposed to, everyone talks about Latavius Murray or Eddie Lacy or a bigger back. I think Gillislee is one of those guys that has shown he can do it in limited reps. I don't know if somebody's going to make the offer or not.
It's very open now.
Right. So we're going to jump into the frequently asked fantasy questions. Before we do that, I do want to remind you, head over right now to ultimatedraftkit.com. Pre-order the Ultimate Draft Kit because this is the cheapest you can get it all season long. It's early bird pricing. This thing was a monster hit last year. And some of the things that make the Ultimate Draft Kit unique, the days are gone when you go to the store and you buy that magazine.
Well, they're still here.
They're still there, but
If you want outdated information.
the players are on the wrong teams, and you just have so much happening now in the NFL that's too dated. What we do is we put together this Ultimate Draft Kit, and we include not just our rankings, which we do, our stat projections, every positional ranking. We have something called risk rankings in there where we go in and we tell you, hey, this guy's a little bit of a safer pick. This guy's more risky. Maybe that means more upside. Maybe it means more downside. We include 100-plus video profiles. So we go through and we give you our 2 cents on over 100 players on video, which is something nobody else has. And then there is just everything else, sleepers and breakouts and busts. We hit on a lot of these last year. It's a very ever-changing live draft kit.
It's alive.
It's alive is right. So, and we're really excited to have Matt Harmon a part of it this year. He's got his reception perception, premium exclusive stats for over 50 wide receivers. That's going to give you that upper echelon edge at the wide receiver position.
He's never done that before. He has never statted out 50 NFL players before. And so we're happy and proud to be able to be a part of getting that going.
He's a workhorse. He's a Clydesdale.
We've
got a Clydesdale as part of the Ultimate Draft Kit.
You want to know what he's doing right now? Right this second?
Probably statting.
He's working on wide receivers.
He's probably eating cauliflower. But
yes.
Right, at the same time. But check it out, ultimatedraftkit.com. Let's get into you got something else.
Yeah, do not forget the also brand new Ultimate DFS Pass where we are helping you take on the DFS Giants with some proprietary information, just great articles every single week.
Yeah. It'll pay for itself quick.
Yes.
All right, let's talk frequently asked fantasy questions. The The FAFQ is here. Guys, let's start with finding a league. A lot of people constantly asking us, how do I get into the right league? How do I start a new league? What are the best scoring systems? Let's start with some overview on that side of it because, look, I've said this a million times. If you have a league and you get a few of these things wrong or you have 3 or 4 guys in this league that barely pay attention, it's over. I mean, this is not going to be fun for you. And this show is built around building leagues that are really fun and then winning them.
Yeah, here's how you don't do it. You don't go to ESPN or Yahoo and then just join a random league. You know what I mean?
They make it easy. But
yeah,
I wouldn't do that.
You can do it, but then you won't really enjoy that the way that you will when there's actual camaraderie.
Take that, random people.
Yeah.
But, it would be our recommendation. Try to – I think primary, right? The number one thing is that people that people that are close to you, that you converse with, whether that's at work, at school, family.
Classmates, whatever it might be.
Whatever it is. And I would recommend allow people who maybe you're close, like I'm close to Mike, but Mike has a little circle of friends. I'm giving an example here.
Okay.
Clearly we don't know each other. But he knows 2 or 3 people that he's close with. Well, I don't know them, and I might be like, well, don't bring them in. But do let I've heard some leagues that's like, okay, we've got a group of 3 guys that are really close, and each one of those guys has a group of 3 other guys.
Mm-hmm.
And then you bring in those, and you've got this whole league, and those circles grow in together.
I'd say after that, when you do that, it's crucial to start some kind of a communication hub. Our leagues use just a private Facebook group. I mean, it's very easy. You get notifications. It's a great place to talk trades, to talk junk. You could, the GIFs, right? I can throw a GIF up on Facebook in no time and ridicule people, and it's a way to keep people together.
And you do.
Of course, I do.
If you don't have enough people, we try to make a resource available to you at footclanleagues.com. For all of our patrons, where you can find some dedicated players, some local players. Maybe you want an online league. Maybe you want a dynasty league. Maybe you want a PPR league versus a standard league. One of the questions we get a lot is, what is your basic setup for a redraft league or a keeper league? So let's address that. Let's start with a redraft league. What's your favorite setup for that type of scoring system, size, all of those things?
I think your standard size of league would be 12 teams. That's the most common and I believe the most fun. We've said it before, though, if you can only find 10 good players or even 8 good players and junk, stick with that. As far as, let's say you're in a 12 team, because if you're in 10, I might expand the rosters a little bit more. In a 12 team league, I would say 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and a flex is my preferred.
Did you say a tight end?
And a tight end,
okay.
A defense, and get rid of the kicker.
Yeah, you are not pro kicker. I'm indifferent to the kicker
I'm
position.
Kicking the kicker.
If your league doesn't want it, I don't care. What about bench spots? People ask that question.
I like 5 to 6. I think anything larger than that, it's if your league is not active and you have a large bench, then your waiver wires will be depleted. It creates more movement. You have to make really hard decisions sometimes of a certain guy you don't want to drop, but because of the size of the bench, maybe you have to make that move. It brings in more fun and more strategy to me to have the bench not just infinite sized.
Now, what about an IR spot? Do you guys believe in an IR spot?
We use the IR spot on ESPN, but all providers are different. And the people ask us, well, where do you like to play? We like ESPN because a giant part of that is because of how the IR spot works. In ESPN, if a player once they are ruled out, they're not going to play this week, they get the O designation. You can move on to IR and then add a piece for the weekend, a replacement piece. Other sites don't do it like that. NFL.com, you can only use the IR spot if your guy's on the PUP or the IR, and at least at one point it was suspended guys could go on there as well, which was
weird.
Was fantastic if you knew that, and sucked if you didn't know that. But so that's why we like ESPN, is because you can be, while our benches are small like that, you can still do tweaks without, maybe you don't have to drop that guy. You slide him into your IR and then add a piece for the weekend.
And while that IR doesn't necessarily emulate the real NFL, and sometimes I hear people go, well, but that's not how the IR works. Look, I like more movement in my leagues. I like where this is why I prefer a redraft or a keeper over a dynasty, because there's more waiver wire action. We like active leagues where there's trading and waiver wire pickups and roster moves and shifts happening all the time.
Absolutely. And so let's talk about the scoring, the fractional scoring conundrum. A lot of leagues have fractional scoring. Do you guys prefer fractional scoring?
Conundrum?
Yeah, I don't know why this is a conundrum. If you're not using fractional scoring, please.
We have the technology.
It's not 1991.
Right. And that's why it didn't exist back then.
Yeah,
it's
difficult.
I've seen arguments for full point scoring, not fractional scoring. And they're all really dumb.
Let me give
all of the arguments
really quickly. I'll let you continue your rant. But just to clarify, traditional scoring is if Julian Edelman has 9 yards receiving, he will not receive a full point until he hits the 10-yard mark. In a fractional system, he would have 0.9 points when he has 9 yards receiving. Continue your rant.
No, my rant is just all of the arguments base from, and here's the reality. Whatever the argument they're actually making, people that say, no, whole point scoring is better, what they might not even realize of themselves is that the only reason that they think that way is because that's the league they play in.
Right.
And probably the only reason they play in that league is because it's been around for a while before it was easy to do fractional scoring. It just makes more sense for everything that happens to be rewarded with a little bit of points and not have arbitrary thresholds you have to get to have anything.
One of the reasons we're doing this show at this point is so that if you are in one of those longer running leagues, or if you're starting a new league, you can make those tweaks and adjustments without it being some sort of desperate race to the clock before the draft day. You can make those adjustments now. We are definitely proponents of fractional scoring. You don't end up with ties almost ever. Let's shift gears to that keeper league format. Our league of record is a 3-keeper league. That's one that we've played in for a while. One of the reasons we're big proponents of keeper leagues and dynasty leagues is because of the history that you build and because of the fact that you have activity in the league. Jason just talked about liking moving pieces and parts. You get activity throughout the year. You can trade draft picks. You can trade these keepers. And so let's talk for a minute about maybe a basic format for a keeper league, and then we'll get into the details about maybe how we can select keepers in a keeper league. So let's start with like a basic format. How do you prefer the 3 keepers? People ask that a lot. Should I be a 1-keeper league, a 5-keeper league? And how does it contrast to your preference in dynasties?
I think 2 or 3 keepers is the right amount. Because if you're in a keeper league, you still have draft day.
You want the draft
to be extraordinarily important, but you want some holdover pieces. If you keep too many guys, then the draft is not that good, and you should just go all the way to a dynasty league where you keep the whole roster. So I prefer 2 or 3, and there's 2 ways to do it usually. You either just say every team in the league, you got to pick 2 guys or you got to pick 3 guys, and then we're going to start our draft. You can pick whichever guys you want, or you say you get to pick them at the value at which you drafted them. So you can, if you were wise and you got David Johnson 2 years ago in the 10th round, you would actually get to keep him super late and have an awesome value because you were such a great drafter the year before. I don't have a preference between those 2 systems. I love both.
I like more of an option you didn't talk about, which is keep a guy for what they should be valued for moving forward into the future. So, you don't get those unbelievable bargains where.
So how is that determined, Mike?
So it would be this year's average draft position, and there's average draft position everywhere. We love using Fantasy Football Calculator. Your game provider always has a ranking list, and so if a guy is, let's say ESPN, this guy's ranked 14th, well, he would cost you a 2nd-round pick to keep that guy. Or if you want to reward someone for being a better drafter, just slide him back one round. The danger of with the keeper leagues is guys like David Johnson and Odell Beckham, where they skyrocket from absolute just waiver fodder into this guy is the top 3 player, and it can just shift the balance a little bit too much for me for keeper leagues.
Does that change for you if you place a restriction on the amount of times a player is kept?
No, because
I like rewarding people for finding those.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying. But
gems.
I don't think it should be a 10-round reward. Give them 1 to 2 rounds of a reward. And as far as keeping a player forever, it's pretty infrequent to me where you see these guys just go on a Jerry Rice level tear right now. So who is the best fantasy wide receiver in the league right now?
Antonio Brown.
He's only been that for 3 years.
Right.
It feels like forever, but it's only been 3 years, and before that it's other guys. And so I feel like players, a reign as the fantasy dominant player, it's not a 10-year stretch anymore to me. I mean,
very rarely.
Maybe Odell Beckham could, because he came out, he started as that, so he could end up being that kind of a player. But even running backs, I mean, their careers.
It's been since like LaDainian Tomlinson.
Right. For how great Le'Veon Bell and David Johnson are, I mean, their shelf life as that peak elite fantasy running back, it's not that long.
All right, staying in the starting a league vein, let's talk waivers. 2 questions for you guys, 2 frequently asked fantasy questions. 1, how should waivers work in a regular league? And number 2, what days should waivers process? So let's start with the first one. How can they work and how should they work?
They can work one of 2 main methods. You either have a waiver priority system, so there's 12 teams in the league, and then it's like based on your record in reverse order. The worst team gets the first pick at a guy. So if everybody wants this guy, then I have the highest waiver priority. I get him. And then you have strategy built in there of like, do I spend my high priority pick on this guy, or do I wait, hold it for another week, hoping that there's some fun to be had there for sure. But the much more fun system, in my view, and I think all 3 of our views, is the FAAB system, the free agent acquisition budget system, where at the beginning of the year you get whatever, $100. It's arbitrary and it's fake. It's not like you're putting your real money on the line here. It's just you get a pool of 100 units of credit to spend throughout the year on whoever you want. And everybody does. There's no, there's maybe a tiebreaker priority list based on,
it's probably
reverse order
record,
of your record. But if there's a guy that drops onto waivers and you think he is going to rock the whole season, you could spend your whole 100 on him, or you could try to get him for $2 or $5, and it's a blind bidding system. And every single week, every single day of the week, once waivers open up, is exciting, and there's so much more strategy and so much more action on those waiver systems.
So we definitely prefer FAAB. What day should waivers process? How should they process?
Well, we have it set up so that it's the waiver period runs at whatever time it is. It's like 10 o'clock in the morning for us.
You need to make sure that it's early enough that on Sunday morning,
yes,
you can have that go through and then make your roster.
Because once the waiver period runs through and the bids go in, players are acquired, the free agents are shut again. You can't just go scavenge the rest of the remaining free agents. And we have this happen every day except for Tuesday. And so, yes, people think, well, what if Sunday morning comes and I get some really bad news from my team? Well, that's unfortunately one of the risks that you have to take with this system. I don't think that we've ever really come across just a catastrophe in our league since we've been running this system for the last few years. And you want to leave it open on Monday. Some people think, well, I don't want waivers running Monday. Games have already happened Sunday. Don't freak out, because whoever played on Sunday, they're locked. You can't add them. And occasionally there'll be some Monday night games where a fantasy owner needs to make a move on Monday. And then you shut it down on Tuesday to give everyone a chance to recuperate from the insanity of the week.
And put in all their bids. Now, one of the reasons we really like this type of a format is because it evens the playing field for, let's be realistic here. Not everybody's on their computer at 6 in the morning or 5 in the morning or whenever your waivers go through.
It was a good life when we were we had a tech
There were days.
job.
There were days like that.
We had a tech job in the free agent. We had it for a little bit where it was always open after the waiver period ran, and that just meant as soon as breaking news hit,
First one there, got him.
Pretty much Andy or I would be grabbing them because we'd get an alert. And
because the firemen friends in our leagues were too busy saving people from their houses.
And I'm too busy saving my fantasy team.
Right.
And when it goes through every day, what's great is you have a new topic of discussion for your
Every
league.
day.
When you see that, for example, let's say Mike wants to spend, I don't know, $35 on Torrey Smith, and so he bids silently $35, and I bid, $13 for him after a big week. And Mike figures out that he overspent by a lot, and that's what makes it fun. So,
or when someone foolishly drops a Jordan Howard in their waiver on that main day, then the next day you've got a whole nother day of like everyone's bidding on Jordan Howard.
all right, so we are going to talk some commish issues. But first, some playoffs.
Real quick, $0 bids.
And before we move on, I want to make sure if you're doing a FAAB system, super important that you activate $0 bidding, okay? Because you don't want to run out of your money and then not be able to make transactions. That's just the worst. And
that is a question we get a lot.
Yeah, always 100% have $0 bidding
because we always want the $0 bids. You're gonna, sorry, Bret Hart. You will most likely run out of money, and in leagues that have restrictions on how many moves you can make, I hate it. I hate having a restriction on how many moves I can make.
Don't stop my fun.
And if you say, well, you have to bid at least $1, then you are putting restrictions on how many moves I can make.
I see a theme that has come through this entire discussion so far, which is
selfishness.
Well, certainly, but that's built into fantasy football. It's what Jason said earlier about. I think better leagues are leagues where more things happen, right? Where you facilitate activity. So $0 bids versus restricting movement,
right?
It takes away the fun of the league. There's less to talk about, and if there's less to talk about, the league's just going to be less dynamic. It's going to be less engaging. Playoff-wise, we've talked about this before. Best weeks for fantasy playoffs. I think the general rule is not week 17.
That's yes, it should
Please, people, don't
This is the time to change it right now. If you're in one of those leagues that has non-fractional scoring in week 17, which is probably they're hand in hand,
yes,
you should move it to end your league, go weeks 14 through 16, whatever it might be, 15 and 16 if you're in a smaller league, and move to ending the season when relevant players are playing, okay, and change the fractional scoring.
Yeah, when you get into week 17 and you've had a juggernaut tearing it up, and you're, let's say this year you're running Elliott, maybe you have Dak, you get into your championship, the player who carried you there, they're not playing, and that's just garbage.
But Mike,
yes, voice of public opinion.
Isn't that just part of the strategy where you gotta go and draft players that are from okay teams? I can't even say it.
That you said that was the whiniest voice of public opinion that has ever spoken.
I've heard that argument of, well, you need to make sure you get players who are just not as good.
Arguments for full point scoring are incredibly good by comparison to arguments for week 17 playoffs.
I will tell you this. I'm not joking. Every year that we've done the show, after week 7 or when week 17 is rolling around, we get a couple tweets like, I should have listened to you guys on week 17, and now I'm in my championship, and I don't have my star running back or star wide receiver. This is garbage.
Piggyback question. How do you feel about owners who are not in contention for the championship putting in waiver claims for top pickups?
Oh, this is where I think we might disagree.
Really?
With opinions out there. I don't think there's a unanimous opinion on this. But for me, I love it.
I do too.
I love it. I don't think to me, it's not, well, we are the elite. We're in the playoffs. Peons, plebes, please shut it down. You are not playing anymore. You're like, no, I'm going to continue to play because, spoiler, playing the role of the spoiler, when you have nothing left, at least you have that. And I can ruin your day and that makes me feel good.
It is a little bit of a jerk move sometimes. That's
It's
how it feels when you're the other guy.
Move, and
yes,
and it feels good.
Where you draw the line is you can't have teams in contention petitioning other teams to sign players away. That's called collusion.
Yeah, exactly. That's collusion. That's straight wrong. But the reason I think that we lean towards liking that is similar to what Andy just said a minute ago. That's the theme is more activity. Because what's the alternative? Let's say you don't have players that are out of the playoffs being active or involved anymore. They just they don't care. Right. They're apathetic. Is that the kind of fantasy football league you want to be in? An apathetic league where, look, if they're making those waiver moves, they're also tracking your championship game and your playoff matchups, and they care about who's winning. And they're watching football, caring about, is it Andy or is it Mike winning this game, and going back and forth. Those leagues are exciting and fun. If I'm like, I'm not in the playoffs, I'm checking out. I don't care. Tell me next year who won the championship.
It's twofold here. One is this is one of the reasons we like keeper leagues, because you can be invested in signing players beyond being in contention and wanting those players on your roster for potential keepers. And two, it's another reason we do things that make it fun for non-contention teams towards the end of the year, whether it would be the fact that we don't incentivize tanking by making a lottery out of the bottom 4 teams, or the fact we have, in one of our leagues, we have the 5 and 6 team compete against each other for that pick.
But if you're playing in a cash league, take some of that grand prize and have a small winnings for top points of the week. You keep people engaged all throughout the year. Even week 16, championship week, the team with the absolute worst record, you're playing for something. And to me, and that also involves they're active on the waiver wire. So I'm all for this.
All right, let's talk about some commissioner frequently asked questions. When is it okay to veto a trade? Oh my goodness, is there a question we get asked more than this one?
Never.
Yeah.
There's one reason to veto a trade, one reason only, and I would veto a trade 100% of the time.
If it's with Jason. Oh, sorry.
It's collusion, meaning if there are teams that are kind of teaming up with one another to make a strategy that is, good for one team. Even if it turns out better for both teams, but at the expense of another. Like, if two players are really both need this guy to lose this week, and so they team up and make a trade to make one of the teams stronger, that's two teams working in cahoots, working together. Every team should be working independently against one another, and as soon as that breaks, then you got a problem. Otherwise, if someone fleeces someone in a trade, too bad.
Yeah, I mean, the only time that this comes into question at all is if you're in, like a family league or a beginner's league and someone's blatantly taking advantage. But the reality is you have to learn, and there are no guarantees in trades. There is no guarantee that what looks like on paper is a one-sided trade will end up a one-sided trade in the end. And so you have to let people make their own bet and then sleep in it if it's not collusion. And that is, we all strongly feel that way. We feel like it's better for your league. It stops players from being hesitant about making moves, which makes your league less active and exciting and less discussion and trades. You want to facilitate trading. You want to facilitate discussion and rants. And then, you know what? 5 weeks down the line, all of a sudden that trade might look a lot different because you just don't know how these things pan out. We've been in enough leagues for enough years to know that when a trade looks like a fleecing, sometimes it just plain isn't.
Yeah, and I'll throw in here, because we advocate the time to veto a trade is essentially never. Turn on instant trades. Don't have this
two-day window,
2-day waiting period where now you've created a problem where, we made an agreement at Friday at 9 p.m. That it's not going to clear before the weekend, and now this trade is going to blow up and we have to put it on hold. We're grown-ups here. We're all playing
sort of
sometimes, but just if a trade is agreed on between player A and player B, just let it go.
Yeah, and if it's collusion, you can undo it.
Right.
I mean, you don't have to affect every single trade during the whole year with a 2-day waiting period when only one trade might have an impact.
Exactly. Most leagues, think about how many trades get vetoed in that year. What is it, like 1 or 2 of?
I've heard some leagues where it's
well, yeah,
it's ridiculous.
That's where you need to rewind the tape about 2 minutes and just listen again. Don't veto like that.
When is the best weekend to hold your draft? What's the general strategy with drafting?
After week 3 of the fantasy. Yes, well, obviously. Yes, after week 3 of the regular season, you really know how teams are working. No, in the preseason, after week 3, that means after everybody that's going to get injured, has gotten injured. Generally.
You're basically trying to prevent injury
to starters,
so you don't draft everybody in before the preseason starts. And
I will admit, it is hard to wait that long, though, because when you get into August, I mean, you are just – salivating at fantasy drafts, and I want it every day. And then it's like, okay, I want to draft before the preseason. I want to draft. Oh, I saw 1 week of preseason. I want to draft, but after week 3 is probably the best week.
To me, the hardest problem for waiting is when I feel like I have a gold nugget of information on a player, and the more you wait, the more someone else has a chance to figure that out, or for that player to do something in preseason.
Let's draft. Hurry. Let's draft.
Destroy their ADP to a point where I don't want to draft them anymore.
Beware of Labor Day. That's always around that time of year. And look, plan your draft early. There's a good resource we've used before called Doodle. You can go to doodle.com. It basically, you can put in, I don't know, let's say 5 different draft days that would work. And then you have all of your league mates go to the link that you provide for them and put in their availability. Maybe I'm available for 3 of those 5 days. Jason's available for 4 of them. Mike's available for 2. It'll show you which day everybody's available for.
How did we ever find like a draft day before?
Because people used to call people on the telephone.
No, I remember trying to schedule one on Facebook, and we would start in June. Or maybe even earlier, because we knew it would take 2 months to find one single day where everyone can do it.
Now, if you're in a dynasty startup, when should you do that draft?
The dynasty startup, it depends on how you want to do it handle it with the rookies. I've experienced both before the draft and after the draft. That's really just that's up to you.
I would do it after the NFL draft. I don't like the idea of drafting people based on their college tape, but not knowing where they land. So I would do it after the NFL draft. Anytime after that is fine. You don't have to wait till preseason. And in fact, that's part of what's great about having a dynasty league in your, this is a hard word to come up with.
In your catalog?
Yeah, there you go. That's perfect, Mike. You should talk for me. In your catalog of leagues, because it allows you to have activity in the months where, redraft leagues have none.
As far as rookie drafts, for me, basically right when the NFL draft is done, have at it. Get the new league year going.
How do you go about booting a friend
out
of a league if they're inactive?
I talked to Andy, and I said, take care of business.
Because I'm the commissioner and I have no heart.
This is a really tough scenario because we are playing a game, and you don't want to destroy your friendship with your best friend because they are not active, and you don't want them in the league. I don't have an answer for this question.
You don't have an answer?
I don't know how to kick your friend out of a league.
Well, you certainly don't go from 0 to 100 on the kick out of the league.
Right.
That's the answer. The answer is you set the ground rules for the league, and you make them public to everybody, and then you give that person an opportunity to get in line, okay? To get in line before you kick them out. And you don't have to do that in some jackbutt way and be a jerk about it. Like, sometimes commissioners of fantasy leagues can be very similar to, like, the president of an HOA.
Oh, they're the worst.
And you get a little bit of, like, a taste of power, and then you use that to
and then you drive around my street and you're like, hey, you were parked on the street at 12:30 a.m.
No parking in the yard.
Yeah, because we're cool and we have friends over at 12:30.
So you don't want to be power hungry about it. Just explain, look, we're trying to build a very fun league, and you need to be active to be in this league. If you don't want to be, that's okay. You can leave. And you say that in a nice way. You say, hey, you could go be a co-commissioner. You can go do something else. But we want to get somebody in here who wants to be active. So
get a list of people waiting to get into your league. Always have that going, because that can help put pressure on people who are kind of on the cusp. They're like, I don't know if I want to stay in this league or not. Sometimes the reason they don't leave is because they don't want to like hurt the league or anything. But if it's like I kind of want to be here, but I don't really care, and there's 3 people waiting to get in the league who do care, then I'm like, they might take themselves out and go, all right, well, I'll let Jim Bob Cooter, who really wants to play fantasy football, because he's got some inside information.
So I realized something, gentlemen. Did you know this? We're doing this is a 2-parter. We've got so many questions to get through.
This is a 2-parter?
This is going to be a 2-parter, whether you like it or not. We've got a ton of strategy questions to get into, and I have another question.
What are some examples of strategy questions?
Some strategy questions that we're going to get into are things like, what's the best draft strategy for the upcoming year? Or explain some of the differences between 0 RB or best player available or RB heavy. Talk about position scarcity. Talk about drafting single positions and how much do you factor what team a player is on versus their statistics and things like that. How do you manage positions on the bench? How many of each position?
I like it.
We have a lot of other questions, and I say that because we're going to finish with kind of a big question here on today's show. We'll get into some more of these on the next episode, as well as all the free agency news. And the reality is we wanted to have a big free agency episode on Thursday, but not all the signings are going to be done by the time we record. And so that's going to be some on Thursday, some on Tuesday. We'll be able to get into more of these questions. Hopefully you've enjoyed it so far. But let's finish with this one because it's a big one, okay? How do you determine the draft order for your league? What are some exciting and fun ways to do that? Because that is one of the most frequently asked questions that we get. You hear all sorts of different ideas. Here are a few that Brooks has put a few of these together. We've heard things like the Kentucky Derby before, right? Where you can go ahead and have everybody pick a horse and then watch the Kentucky Derby together, and whoever wins the first pick in the draft. We've heard things, look, you got March Madness starting up. Do a bracket, and who's got the best bracket can have first pick. If you want to have a fun way to do it, right? And you're not coming from reverse order of standings.
I've also seen, where people do combines, but it's not like the NFL combine where you're running and sprinting. They do like silly games. My wife would love this. She loves putting together
tricycle races.
Yes, exactly. Like have a tricycle race with your league.
A beef jerky eating competition.
What?
Oh.
That is the best idea. We got to do it today.
No, you do a beet eating contest.
Oh, a beet eating
Don't you
contest.
we will do that.
That person would be worthy of the first pick after they stop vomiting. Look, you can do putt.
Johnny is deceased.
You can do putt golf. You can play some what is that? Cornhole. Play some cornhole competition.
The first pick is now available for someone else.
You could do some beer pong.
Death by beets.
Mike would love video game competitions like
because I would win.
Some Mario Kart, some Madden, some Super Smash Brothers.
If we're playing Super Smash Brothers, then I won't even play and I'll just take the first pick.
This is a funny one. You could do a league trip to like a Dave & Buster's and go by the amount of tickets won.
Oh, that's my
like
favorite.
Everybody's
right
got
now.
what, $20, and then you go get as many tickets as you can possibly get.
No, I can tell you right now. I'm going to the machines, going for jackpot.
So you just go to the giant wheel that is it's not gambling, kids.
This is not a slot machine.
I mean, you put money in and you spin the wheel, and then if it lands on a certain thing, you are rewarded.
Yes. Not
gambling, kids.
Yeah. So and then you can have fun with, you can do random drawings in a more fun way. We've got a golden it's almost like a bingo machine that you can spin up and pick the winners out of. There's online software, lottery ball machines and things like that. Obviously you can draw names from a hat. But that's so 1998.
Random.org.
Yeah. So there are a lot of, and I know you have ideas out there. You can share those on our Twitter so other people can see them. So there are a lot of fun ways to do your draft order. We'll close on that today, and we'll get into some more of the frequently asked fantasy football questions on the next episode, including trade stuff as well. How do you go about starting a good trade discussion? How do you not be known as that one guy in the league that everybody just deletes the trade offer? That's disrespectful.
That's not you.
That's
blah blah blah.
What do you think of my big
my
dynasty league trade?
I feel like you should bring that up.
Okay. So
if you made it to the end of the episode, you get to hear about Andy's big trade.
yeah, so we're in a dynasty league, and I had Julio Jones, and someone came with the fire. And so the trade was basically I traded away Julio Jones and Russell Wilson. And I basically got back Michael Crabtree, Andrew Luck, the number 2 pick in the rookie draft, and his first-round pick for next year.
Yeah, I mean,
So I
you
let
certainly
Julio
got a
go.
haul.
I
Yeah.
let Julio go. It was tough because I wanted to compete this year. I don't know if I can. I don't know what that number 2 pick will be. I don't know if it's going to be a running back. I don't know if it's going to be a wide receiver yet. We'll see how the draft goes. But let me know what you think of that trade, people.
It's a big move, and I mean, Julio's Julio's
He's going to be – he just turned 28. He'll be
28. He just had another bunion cut off of his foot. This guy gets a foot surgery every offseason, so there certainly are some risks.
It has not hurt him too much so far.
Well, I tell you what, it's never, if I needed a little comfort from my trade, I think the surgery news broke moments after my trade was completed. So it at least made me, you never know how long that can go. But Julio's amazing, and I'm going to be sad.
And, I mean, don't forget, Julio Jones himself was once in a rookie draft.
Brooks, weigh in on that trade. Do you like it for me, or do you like it for the guy who got Julio?
I'd have trouble giving up Julio.
Yeah, the answer to that question is almost always the guy who got Julio.
It's ironic because we made almost opposite trades. I traded for Antonio Brown and paid the
number
iron
one pick
price, gave up the number 1 pick and Sammy Watkins. So
Dynasty-wise,
oh come on,
Dynasty-wise, that guy got more value out of it. But I'm in contending mode right now.
Sure, that's the balance.
I think it puts me over the top.
That's why in Dynasty leagues those trades, they're impossible to evaluate right away. You almost need to keep a log of them and then go back and say, hey, how'd this one turn out? I think that happened last year where one of our guys got Jordan Howard and Devontae Freeman in a trade. And it didn't look good at the time, and then Jordan Howard turned into something. So, all right, that does it for today's show. I do encourage you, head over to YouTube, youtube.com/thefantasyfootballers. Check out the show after the show today. We're going to be talking about, I'll tell you right now, we're going to be talking about what foods, if you could pick 3 of them, would you want on a deserted island for the rest of your life?
Oh, my goodness.
All right. Thanks for tuning in. Talk to you on Thursday. See you later.
Check out fantasyjocks.com for your trophies.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Join our fantasy football community on jointhefoot.com and follow us on Twitter @TheFFBallers.